Okay, so thank you everyone for attending tonight. We have a presentation on the proposed DPW-School maintenance facility. This project's being brought forward at special town meeting October 3rd. The town will be seeking $28 million to fund this project's construction and design and project management. We're going to have a presentation tonight made by our design team. Representing the design team is Jeff Alberti and Tony Westbizer. Also with me up front tonight is Brian Gilbert, the Director of Public Works for the town engineer Kevin Hardiman, and the foreman for school facilities, John Marchand. In the audience tonight, we have two planning board members, Jim Duffy and Vinnie Fatalia, as well as two selectmen, Mark Crapman and Jane Wellman, as well as other audience members. So we're going to start with the presentation. I'll talk a little bit about town meeting and then open up for any questions the public may have. So I'll hand it over to you, Jeff.
All right, thank you. Are we going to leave the lights as is? All right. We'll dim the lights a little bit and allow folks in the audience to see the presentation a little bit better. Thanks for the opportunity to present this project to you this evening. What we're going to do is walk through the process that we've been following to develop this proposed DPW and school maintenance facility, talk a little bit about the programming efforts, why we're doing this project, and then talk about some of the concepts that were developed, as well as the costs for the proposed facility. With any project, before we get started and talk about concepts and what's being developed, we really like to focus on the public works and school maintenance responsibilities, because this is really key. This is what's driving the programmatic needs of the facility. So early on in the process, we met with DPW and school maintenance departments to understand their operations. And starting with DPW, to talk about what they do and their responsibilities for the town, I've said in the past that I could spend a whole presentation talking about the services that they provide, but I wanted to highlight some of the major ones. And really the first line says it all, that the DPW touches the lives of the residents every day by maintaining that infrastructure that the community relies on. And that's everything from repair and maintenance of town roads, including 160 miles of roadway, 36 miles of sidewalks. They're responsible for the storm drainage system. This is the out-of-sight, out-of-mind systems underground, which include 3,300 catch basins and manholes. They're responsible for the repair and maintenance of 180 miles of water mains and structures, as well as maintenance of 158 miles of gravity sewers, 15 miles of force mains, 46 pump stations. They're responsible for the maintenance of 155 pieces of equipment that are used to maintain this infrastructure on a daily basis, including also being responsible for the engineering services that support all of the capital improvement projects townwide for townwide permitting and regulatory oversight. And it's important to note that they are on call 24 hours a day to handle incidents and emergencies, and those include obvious snow and ice storms, windstorm cleanup. They're becoming more and more of a problem, and they're on call 24 hours to keep that infrastructure running and available to the community. So if you look at that list, you think about what you use and what impacts your daily lives, you can really see that they do touch the lives of the residents every day by maintaining that infrastructure. In addition to that, the school maintenance department, they're also responsible for some significant assets within the community, including the maintenance of 8 buildings, and that includes approximately 1 million square feet of space, which is very significant and very critical to the town and the students. They're responsible for the maintenance of approximately 165 acres and grounds, and their work includes preventative maintenance, including carpentry, landscaping, plumbing, HVAC. So as you can see, these services are very critical to maintaining that significant infrastructure that supports the community. So in understanding that allowed us to begin our programming efforts. But prior to getting to the details of that, we wanted to understand, why does the town need a new facility? And for anyone who's had a chance to visit the existing facilities, it is quite apparent that the town is in need of replacing the existing operations and supplementing them. And I just wanted to summarize some of those deficiencies, including the existing facilities are 40 to 60 years old. You can see some of the pictures on the right. As a result, a lot of the significant equipment that is used to maintain the infrastructure of the community is left outdoors. This impacts the life expectancy of the equipment. This impacts response times. This impacts maintenance costs of that equipment, and which can really add up over time. In addition, the existing buildings do not comply with today's codes, from sprinkler systems to ADA accessibility to egress and fire separation. The toilet facilities do not meet plumbing code. In fact, there are no locker shower facilities within the existing DPW facility. And you can see in the photograph on the right that the lockers are actually located in vehicle storage areas. You can see the lockers on the right, and there's the edge of a plow on the left-hand side. And we also found that the buildings do not meet current mechanical code, with equipment being stored indoors, trying to protect that equipment. That is a significant issue for these facilities. And this all results in operational inefficiencies due to these space constraints. And finally, one other very important thing to note is that the school maintenance operation is currently without a permanent facility to work from. And we hope to solve that with this facility. So I just want to talk a little bit about what is proposed. And this is an aerial view of the existing site. You can see Whipple Road on the right running north-south on the page, and Pine Street is at the bottom of the page running left-right. The main existing DPW facility is shown here in yellow. This is the wing-shaped building that we refer to for the site. And further into the site are two more buildings. These are existing salt storage structures. One is used for storage of materials, and the further back one is primarily used for salt storage. And then up near Pine Street is the existing food pantry. Under the original proposed concept, when we began this process, we envisioned that we would wipe the site clean, give us a nice clean slate to work with, and begin developing concepts. We went through the process of programming the facility by meeting with staff to understand their operations, and worked through multiple iterations of concepts to come up with what we felt was the most cost-effective and efficient facility for the town's needs. And we essentially developed two main buildings on the site, as well as some support structures, and they're shown in yellow. And as you look further at the site development, you can see the gray area represents the circulation and pave areas around the site. And as you look in the upper right, you see the legend where the red arrows represent new construction, and the gray arrows represent existing structures that are going to be reused. And as I quickly walk you through this initial concept back in 2021, we had two main buildings. This is building one, which primarily included vehicle and equipment storage as well as vehicle maintenance. And then to the right of that is building two, which included the main operations building of offices, employee facilities, workshop space, a wash bay, as well as some additional vehicle and equipment storage. Further in the site, we were proposing a new fueling facility in addition to the salt shed, and reusing the existing salt shed as well as maintaining the existing food pantry. When we developed this concept, we also developed some initial cost estimates. Prior to developing, early in the process, we were in the $32 million range as we developed the facility, and as a result of cost increases associated with the pandemic and the pandemic-driven recession, as well as material cost increases and material shortages, that quickly spiked up to about $37 million. And we met with the selectmen, we met with DPW administration and town administration, and realized that that was not a project that the town could support. So we wanted to take a new look, a fresh look, and come up with a concept that would result in cost savings while still meeting the operational requirements. So to describe that to you, what I wanted to do is take the main building. So take building one, which is shown in the center of your screen, and essentially pull that aside in the upper left. And then take building two and put that piece over to the side. And that's just for discussion purposes. What we did is we took a look at this site and came up with a new program that is shown here. And essentially what we did is took pieces of that original program and developed a new operations building, an L-shaped building, and that's shown in yellow as building number one. And so we took pieces such as a portion of the vehicle storage area, we took the vehicle maintenance area, as well as the office, employee facilities, and shop areas. We pieced them together into a main operations building consisting of new construction. We took the remaining pieces, which essentially included the vehicle wash bay, and we brought that piece into the end bay of the existing building shown in gray, the wing-shaped building, as well as the vehicle storage components, and also incorporated them within the existing building. By doing this, we're keeping a lot more of the assets that are on site and reducing costs associated with new foundations, new structure, things of that nature. Because of the the proposed location of the building number 1, in the front of the site, we were displacing the food pantry. As a result, we included some renovation costs within the existing building to replace that food pantry that was going to be displaced by this concept. So essentially what we have now, instead of a lot of red arrows, we have one red arrow which represents new construction, and that includes stacked vehicle storage, a vehicle maintenance component, shops, and offices and employee facilities, and that's shown by the red arrow on the left. And to the right, building number 2 would be the renovation and reuse of the existing structure, which would include vehicle storage, a wash bay, as well as renovations for the food pantry. We also work to reduce the site development costs by maintaining the existing salt shed, maintaining the existing fuel island, and reducing the limits of the pavement, reducing essentially that site development cost by doing the entire site. You can see that how it's reduced on the site, whereas before it was a majority of the site. So let's talk a little bit about pricing. The best way to describe it has been a roller coaster ride, and we appear to be on the uphill track of the roller coaster. What we initially saw when we began this project in 2020 is we used 2019 prices, and then we look at a generally accepted escalation rate, and we were looking at about 5% escalation from 2019 to 2020. So when we began this process, we were looking at about a $31 million total project cost based on the condition of the market at the time. As we all know, in 2020, the pandemic hit, and that has created some havoc in the construction market and construction pricing. Initially, we did bid some projects and we saw a steep decline, which we don't see often, but we did see one primarily because contractors were concerned that there might not be a lot of work, that there would be a long recession associated with that pandemic, so we got some lower prices. But soon after that, as we emerged from the initial phases of the pandemic, we experienced some significant supply chain shortages, and I think everyone has seen that. It's not just in construction materials, it's in everyday products that we all use. So I think it's easy for people to understand that there has been a significant increase in the material costs. There's been significant issues with supply chain, and all of those resulted in spikes in actual cost per square foot of these buildings, and that's what's represented by the blue line. As a result, this same project that we were estimating in 2020 quickly jumped to $37 million, as I talked about earlier, which we felt was not a reasonable price to move forward with, which resulted in us working through and coming up with options to drop that $37 million to initially 29.5, and then again through some efforts and a lot of input from DPW administration, school maintenance staff, as well as town administration and the Board of Selectmen, we dropped it further to the $28 million mark. So that $28 million was representative of a very early concept at the time when we presented this about a month ago to the Selectmen. So just as a very quick history, August 2020, and I'll refer to the numbers at the bottom, approximately $31 million. May 2021, that same project spiked up to about $37.4 million, primarily driven by the supply chain and material shortages and the market conditions. So through the process of developing that revised concept, we were able to initially drop that down to $29.5 million. And that was an adaptive reuse concept that primarily used that existing building to house some of the operations. And then in August, last month, or early August, we developed another estimate that brought us down to about $28 million. Now this represented a total project cost reduction of about 25% through these cost control measures and the adaptive reuse of the building. But we were working at a very conceptual level, and we felt because of the changing market conditions, it would be prudent for us to really work closely with an independent cost estimating firm to evaluate the concept that was developed, to make sure that it was in line with the $28 million, which the town felt at the time was achievable. Through that process, we received an independent estimate for that initial concept. It was about $32.4 million. And understanding that we want to work towards that $28 million mark, we took another look at that concept and came up with a few more modifications that I wanted to just walk you through that brings us to the final concept that's being presented this evening. So essentially, this is the two buildings. You can see the L-shaped building on the left is the new construction, the wing-shaped building in gray on the right is the renovation work. And initially what we did is took a look at that concept and we tightened up the program, just in some key areas. On the vehicle and equipment storage area, we tightened up the length of the building, as well as we had a shop extension which had been creeping up, called that a little bit of scope creep, so we dialed that back. Still meeting the programmatic needs of both departments. So that reduced and cleaned up the overall shape of the building. And the next step, one of the next ideas was to shift the building to avoid the food pantry, because there was some significant cost associated with renovations for the food pantry. So we took that L-shaped building, and this is the location of the food pantry, as you can see in the bottom of your screen, and we just shifted it further back into the site, a little bit to the left. And what that does is protects the existing food pantry, allows that to continue to be used. So you can see that originally we were going to renovate a portion of the existing building. Now we'll leave that food pantry operation where it is, and that eliminates that renovation cost. We also looked at maintaining the existing DPW engineering and office area. They're currently using that space. It's a prominent front-facing space, and it was determined that we could continue to reuse that with some minor renovations, some paint, some flooring, some minor upgrades. And that would essentially reduce the new construction cost of the L-shaped building. So we take that piece, put it back to where it is currently, renovate that space, provide some minor upgrades, and allow it to continue to be used. And that reduces the new program. And by doing that, what we also are recommending is that we still design that building for some bid alternates, so that if the market changes, if we see a reduction in cost, or we have a competitive market where there's a lot of bidders, we might be able to still get that front administration building constructed, or an extension of the vehicle storage garage, and that could further reduce the renovation needs within the existing wing-shaped building shown on the right. And we're still going to maintain that renovation of the wash bay in the upper right. And we think that's important in a good location, because that does provide easy access for all town vehicles to come into the site, wash, and exit the site without having to circulate through the main DPW and school maintenance operations. So this is the preferred plan, now showing some of the limits of pavement, showing that we have a new L-shaped construction operations building on the left, which would include employee facilities, workshops, maintenance, and a portion of the vehicle storage. And then the existing building would continue to be used primarily for vehicle storage and potentially renovation for office space. And so tying that into where we are today in September 2022, we're working through the process of developing design, and we'll take through town meeting's approval. We'll then take the project through full design. That'll allow us to bid the project in the April-May timeframe, and then move forward with construction in the May-June timeframe with a notice to proceed. I just want to close with a few things, both on benefits and sustainability. Starting with benefits, there's certainly a tremendous amount of benefits that this facility will bring to both the DPW and the school maintenance departments. And some of them include, the code compliant and safe work environment for town employees, as we talked about earlier with some of the deficiencies. They just don't have those facilities that are code compliant and safe, and really impact their efficiency of operations. The new facility will protect the town's multi-million-dollar investment in the vehicles and equipment. I showed you some photographs of some very expensive equipment being stored outdoors, which, as I mentioned, impacts operation, impacts life expectancy of that equipment, and increases maintenance costs. It'll be much more efficient workspace, which allows them better response times to better serve the public. The town wants to see the vehicles and equipment be quickly accessed and out on the road to serve the needs of the community, rather than jockeying them around, trying to get them out when they're needed. It does create a consolidated public works and school maintenance campus, which will improve overall efficiencies for the departments, and really does provide them with a better ability to share their resources. And it will result in the reuse of the existing building, as I mentioned, through the concept development, reducing construction costs. There are also some green and sustainable design opportunities that we're considering through this process. They include designing the roof to be solar ready for a future photovoltaic system. And you can see on the right-hand photograph some other DPW facilities where we did the same thing. We designed them to be solar ready. Soon after construction, they went out and were able to do some power purchase agreements and get the solar systems on their roof. There's a tremendous amount of natural daylighting opportunities, which will reduce the need for artificial lighting. So if we can bring that natural light in and put in some sensors that turn off the lights, we can save some costs on energy. And then we'll design the building as a super insulated building, which is really just a cool way of saying we'll add some extra insulation to that envelope to save energy costs long-term, anywhere in the 20 to 35% more than code. There are some other great systems that we'll be looking at for the mechanical systems, high-efficiency mechanical systems, condensing boilers, VRF systems. We are constantly exchanging air within the building because of the industrial nature of the system, so we'll provide heat recovery opportunities. And we'll design the controls for the system to be an integral web-based building management system. And it has optimizing strategies where essentially the building learns how to operate itself over time. When is the most efficient time to turn on? When is the most efficient time for nighttime setbacks? These optimization strategies will save the town significant money in the long run. And then just in closing, it's important to note that if the town doesn't move forward with this project, there are still some significant needs that would have to be addressed. They include the town would need to find a permanent home for school maintenance. I mentioned that earlier, that they currently do not have a permanent home. And the town would need to invest in short-term improvements just to continue to reuse that building, from envelope repairs to roof replacement, ADA improvements, sprinkler and fire protection systems, site improvements, things of that nature. And more importantly, as we have seen costs increasing, the longer we wait, the cost will continue to increase. But the DPW and school maintenance needs will remain throughout. So that's an overview. I know I went through a lot of detail, and I'm happy to circle back and answer any questions or call up any slides if people have a specific question on it. Thank you.
Okay. So that's the project we are planning to bring forward at town meeting on October 3rd. There are 3 warrant articles that deal with this project. The first is Article 3 at town meeting, which we are seeking additional funding in our debt service budgets to pay for a bond issue of $26.5 million. We'll be looking to add to our principal debt service in the amount of $80,000. We'll be looking to add to our principal debt service in the amount of $321,529. Article 4, we'll be seeking to use free cash in the amount of $1.5 million to pay for engineering and design to get the project out to bid, and to pay for any remaining funds will pay for construction and project management. And then Article 5, at town meeting, we'll ask for authorization to allow the selectmen to borrow $26.5 million. The total amount to be spent on the project between Article 4 and 5 is the $28 million that was mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation. It's important to note that we have money currently in the budget that town meeting has approved for debt service. We are just adding to that amount to fund the bond issue of $26.5 million. Town meeting previously approved $2.2 million in October 2019 to design a new DPW/school maintenance facility. That was the project that was shown early on in the presentation. It's also important to note that the funding that we have in the budget was going to fund the original bond issue of, we were hoping at the time, $25 million, and the interest rate at that time when we started this project, interest rates were under 2%. Now we're projecting the interest rates to be closer to 3.4%. So it just shows you what's happened in the time frame since this project started. But we're confident that we have the design and programmatic structure of this project that makes sense. We're not investing a lot of money in the current building. That will be lost if down the road the town wants to do something different on that footprint. We also want to stress that this project, the $26.5 million, will not be borrowed until sometime after we receive bids on the project, sometime in February, March timeframe, and we will not move forward with the project until we know that we can afford it, meaning that the financial outlook of the town is in good shape, that the economy hasn't taken such a downturn that would be a concern for us to move forward with the project. And we'll make sure all of those are in place before we actually borrow the funds. The only funds that will be spent would come out of the $1.5 million in free cash, which would not commit us to any future debt service. So this project, we would like to get approved at this town meeting, but it will not move forward until we know that the economy and the town finances are in good enough shape to move forward. We will not move forward otherwise. Also, if the bids come in higher than what we're projecting, which obviously is the case in any project we do, the project would be put on hold and scaled back again and looked at to be brought back for bidding at a future date. So with that, I'm not sure if the director or the town engineer have anything to add, or if anyone up front does. So I want to open up to questions. If anyone has any questions, you come to the microphone, identify yourself, ask whatever questions you might have.
Bruce Schick, 30 Lucille Drive. One question I had as you were going through it and looking at the reductions is, how long do you expect the new facility, including the renovated facility, will support the projected needs of the DPW and the school department maintenance group?
You're talking about the overall programmatic needs?
Right. In other words, is it 10% growth, 2% growth, or 30% growth?
So we've built in, we've designed and programmed the facility to meet the current needs, plus a percentage of growth that's built in to, I would call it adaptive reuse and reuse of existing space, with an increase of somewhere in the 10% range. What we try not to do is just build space that's not going to be used. We look for it to be, in the future, modified so it could support a different use. One of the ways that we accommodate some of this increase is through mezzanine space, because we're already building large volumes to support things like vehicle maintenance where they have to lift vehicles. So over the support space, we'll build very inexpensive mezzanine space that can be easily converted to provide other support use down the road. So that's some of the ways that we accommodate it without overbuilding the space.
Okay. Another question is sequencing the work. If you're going to be renovating the engineering offices and part of the existing building, where do those operations reside while that's being renovated?
So based on the schedule, we anticipate that the new building will be able to be constructed while they remain within the existing building, and that'll allow us swing space. And in addition, what we've done many times is just used temporary trailers to support operations when we have to get in and do those renovations. The renovations that are being proposed will be very short cycle renovations, so I think that with the new construction, we'll be able to move them very easily without any significant costs.
Sounds great. I think you've done a great job. Thank you.
Jim?
Hi, Jim Duffy from Virginia Road. Gentlemen, thank you for a very comprehensive presentation tonight. It looks like you did a lot of work to give that project a shave to make it more affordable for the town. You've actually answered a number of my questions here, but I'm just going to kind of run through them anyways. So one of my concerns is, not a concern really, but is once the project is completed and the contractor hands over the keys, then the town has to, pay the bills going forward. So I know you mentioned some, 20 to 35% increase in energy efficiency on the building envelope. Is that something that is going to stick with the plan as we move along here? And will that be also on the renovated building? that type of energy efficiency.
So on the renovated building, we're not proposing any upgrades to the major systems or envelope, primarily because of the nature of the use of that space. But for the new building, that 20 to 30% increase in the insulating value and energy savings, that is something that we will definitely be carrying through because we know that you have to maintain and operate this building for 50+ years, so we want it to be as cost-effective as possible. So we continually look for ways to incorporate energy efficiency throughout the design process.
Well, let me ask you about the renovated building then. If that's not really a target for any kind of improved energy efficiency, I mean, I've looked up above the grid in that building, and it's not in very good shape actually, and it needs. I mean, are we talking a new roof on that building with some built-up insulation to get rid of that current system down there, or at least?
Yeah, that's actually a great point. One of the things that we did include in the cost was to replace the roof over the office area, which would ultimately include increasing that envelope, the roof envelope, but not the walls. So that is replacement of the roof over the office areas is included.
Okay, very good. Is the roofing going to be, I mean, I know you're very early in the design stage, and maybe you don't even know the answer to this, but are we looking at, I know you're looking at a roof structure that is solar ready, which means that you're increasing the pounds per square foot to some number?
Correct.
What about the membrane itself? Is that something that we're looking at, like a reflective type, or are we looking at an EPDM?
So on the proposed building, we're looking at a standing seam metal roof, and it is being designed with an additional 8 pounds per square foot built into the structure to accommodate the solar panels.
Okay, thank you. And I know you kind of already talked about efficiencies in the HVAC system. You didn't mention anything. I know the town has a number of electric vehicles, and are we installing EV infrastructure charging in the areas or the buildings down there? Because I'm expecting that as time goes by, there may be more electric vehicles.
Yes, in the proposed building, we are planning on including some infrastructure for battery charging for EV electric vehicles. And we'll also not necessarily wire the entire building for it, but we provide empty conduits and infrastructure, so at any time in the future, if the fleet expands, it's easy to just pull wire because the infrastructure is already there and you don't have to break walls.
Good to
so
hear.
This is some of the pre-planning that we are putting into it.
Good planning. I noticed you are improving it is my understanding that the break rooms and lock rooms and so forth are going to be in the renovated building, or in the new building?
The new building.
Okay. Because I do think it's important for, employee morale and employee retainage, to have a workplace that people actually want to go to. So, and not to mention the health hazards from not being able to clean up, so you're not bringing that stuff home with you.
Right.
You did mention already that there's going to be an efficient automated lighting and HVAC controls in the building, like a smart type building thing. Is there an overhead crane going in any of those buildings?
We are proposing overhead crane in the vehicle maintenance area.
Okay. I think it's great, actually, that we're reusing the building. I wish we could find a way to make it more energy efficient. Maybe that's something we can talk about down the road.
Sure. Yeah, as we go through and develop our design, probably two other areas that we would look at would be the existing mechanical system to see the life expectancy of that equipment, and if it still has some good life in it, we'd want to maintain it from a cost perspective, and then we can work towards making recommendations for future replacement. If we find it's at its near its end, we can also look at a more energy efficient system. And then the wall systems, there are some less costly ways to add insulation to the envelope that we can certainly evaluate, keeping in mind that we're going to work to balance the overall cost, but need to take into consideration that life cycle cost. So right. We'll evaluate some of those as we go through the design and see if there is a cost-effective way of increasing that.
I appreciate that, because I mean those are big bills going down the road. You know what I mean? When you're trying to heat and cool a building like that, an older building.
Sure.
So hopefully we can do something along those lines. My numbers are roughly that commercial buildings in the United States, burn something in the neighborhood of 65% of all the energy that's used in this country. And it's a good area, here in Tewksbury especially, where we're the ones, us taxpayers, we're the ones that are paying the bills going forward.
Right.
That we would like to have that as efficient as possible.
One of the things I'd just like to throw out some of the little things that we do, because it's really important to understand that there's very cost-effective ways of controlling long-term costs, such as every room now, every new room has occupancy sensors, right? We've all been in the room and we're always waving to turn them on if you haven't moved around much. Well, what we're now doing is tying those occupancy sensors into the mechanical system, so that if someone comes in the morning, but they're out on the road all day long, when that occupancy sensor goes off, it actually sends a signal to turn down the mechanical system, the mechanical output for that particular room. Not the full nighttime shutdown, but take it down 2 degrees. That's not hard to recover from that 2 degrees when they return. And so we find that, especially in a DPW and school maintenance operation where they're in and out quite a bit, that would be a great way to save versus running it for 8 hours straight when people might not be there. So those are some of the little things that we're going to incorporate, and we'll continue to look for ways.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And I know a lot of that technology is wireless as well, too, the averaging sensors and so forth, too.
Right.
So that's pretty good. Photovoltaic ready, and that's a good thing. I guess the only other question I have might be for you, Richard, is, do we have a contingency budget going forward here, or are we, if there is something that really looks like it needs to be done somewhere during the construction, or are we pretty tight on that?
So the budget itself has contingencies built in if the new construction starts. So I think Jeff would, and everyone else would say we're pretty good on the contingencies for new construction.
Okay.
If the project doesn't go forward, then the money we have set aside for debt service, as well as even the money we set aside from free cash, we're going to need to do something to the old building. This isn't a can't do anything proposition. Something needs to be done.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. And I'd just like to, for the record, say that I'm in support of the program and the construction, and I hope we can get it done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Susan Young, 1408 Whipple Road. I just have a couple of questions, a few things that I didn't quite understand about the presentation, if you don't mind. So you talked about a stacking for vehicles. So you're proposing to put vehicles on top of other vehicles in a structure?
Not on top, end to end, front to end, essentially. So stacking them in.
Oh.
So they'll be on the same level, but one in front of the other. But that's a great point. I should be clear in future presentations that stacked does, most people think as it is above, but no, this will be on the same level, just parked one behind the other.
Okay. There was a $500,000 line item about some type of a compost cap or some
That's
cap?
correct.
What was that, please?
So historically, it was referred to as a stump dump, where there was materials that were buried in through DEP. We have to officially close that out, and that's handled through a clean material layered over with pavement. And so that's the site development work associated with the regulatory closure of that stump dump area.
Okay. And is that going to be built over, or is that going to be, what's going to happen?
It's going to...
Closing it over, or?
Yeah, it'll be we're looking to do ground improvements in areas where we do need to be over it. In other areas, it'll just be built over, paved over.
Okay. Okay. I was curious as to why the offices that are going to be put into the old building are so far away from the new offices, where if you're going to be having the cafeteria or whatever other amenities that you're going to have for employees, why those folks would be all the way over there rather than closer to all of the other offices, and just have one contiguous area for the vehicles without having people placed right in the middle of two cold areas?
Sure. So the primary driver for that is that that's where they currently are located. And so the most cost-effective way to come up with this layout was to leave that operation where it currently is, which is why you see it in that middle. It actually has a good function there too, because it is front-facing, and so it allows us to reuse the parking areas that are out there where public does come to that building. They'll be able to come from the street side, access that without having to drive into the operating area of DPW. So from a safety perspective, that works out well. So we're just going to reuse the existing office area, which does currently include a break room and toilet facilities, and those will be maintained. But for the operation side, which is really different, is a fine, there's a defined line between those two operations. That operations will go close to the workshops, the vehicle maintenance, and the critical vehicles, and that's a great place to have the office, the employee facilities, and the break room and the training room for the operations staff. So that works out nice from an efficiency perspective.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. It was a really informative presentation, and really happy that we came so that could really see what's being proposed and everything all the hoops you had to jump through to try to make sure that this happens.
Yeah,
So
it's been an interesting process. It's been for us. It's been a great process with the town administration, all the departments, and the selectmen have been very helpful with ideas on ways to control costs in a very unpredictable market. So we appreciate the town's feedback, and they really have helped us through the process as well.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, Paul Young, 1408 Whipple Road. I have a question regarding, is there any contingency for like spill mitigation measures and the vehicle storage and maintenance, in event of, fuel leaks or oil leaks from the vehicles or while they're working on them?
Yes, the new facilities are designed with significant ways to control materials that might, in the vehicle maintenance you're talking about?
Yeah.
So as an example, they have fluids associated with the vehicle maintenance operation. Those are all stored in a separate 2-hour rated room. That room has its own sump, which is connected to a fire alarm, so that if any product were ever to leak from one of the tanks or drums, it would go into that sump, notify the fire department. That sump does not have an outlet.
Yeah.
It's meant to retain all of those fluids that would potentially, if they were ever to leak.
Yeah.
So that's one way that we control. And then within the building itself, all the drainage, let's say, anything that drips within the building would go through a closed floor drain system through a sand gas separator to the sewer system, which would prevent it from making its way into the environment.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Good evening, Vinnie Fratalia, 81 Windsor Drive in Tewksbury. So the plans that you showed tonight, are those the final plans, sir?
That is the final concept, yes.
Okay, so the ones I have changed since August, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I wanted to commend you for changing the food pantry plans from the main building to the where it is presently. I didn't think it was a good plan, putting the food pantry in there, so I'm really glad that you changed that. So another couple of questions I have the cost of $28 million. Can you break it down for building 1 and building 2 by any chance? Roughly, you don't have to, I'm not holding you to the penny, but.
I might need some time to dig through my files.
Okay.
I don't, but it's primarily on building 1 and the site work. Building 2 has very minimal cost, which is essentially the painting, the new flooring, new roof over the office area, and then the wash bay. The wash bay is the more significant cost. Wash bay is somewhere in the $700,000 to $800,000 range to renovate for that wash bay.
Okay.
But that provides significant value for the longevity of the equipment.
I'm disappointed, though, you're not putting more money into the old building, because that was one of the reasons why we're building a new building, because the old building is that bad. So I was hoping you're going to do a good mix of construction for the old building to renovate that up to code and then some, because that's going to be a main source of the DPW for years.
So that's a great point, but what we did that doesn't require us to go through that extensive renovation is that we took the workshop operation, the vehicle maintenance operation, the employee support spaces, that don't meet code, and we put them in the new building, and then we're repurposing, except for that small office area, we're repurposing the rest of that building to just be vehicle and equipment storage, minimally heated vehicle and equipment storage. So within that space, the only upgrades associated with that would be CO detection connected to ventilation. That's all part of the basic use of that space that would be included. So there's actually no need to do major code upgrades because we've taken all of those occupied spaces and we put them in the new building and provided them the code compliant spaces there. So it's actually works out great and helps us save costs.
But as a town, we have to heat that building on a regular basis?
It's minimally heated to 40 degrees for the vehicle and equipment storage areas. Very minimal heat. It's just to keep the curse off, as we say, so that those diesel engines will start. If there's any snow after a snowstorm, you'll get some snow melt off of those vehicles. So there's really there's no need to dump a lot of money into that building.
Okay. Just a couple other questions I have is the plan and the schedule as to what? Construct building 1 if this gets approved first?
Yes, building 1
So
and
getting
second one.
building 1 up and built and then continue having building 2 in place until it's finished?
Correct.
Okay. Time frame for the construction of building 1, is there a?
We're probably in the 19 to 20 month, 18 to 19 month, I'm going to guess at this point. We still have some work to do we'll reach out to some suppliers, understand what the delivery times is on materials and finalize that. But overall, we're looking for a 21, 22 month construction schedule.
Will that keep all of our buildings inside the facility?
All of the
DPW and school maintenance buildings inside the facility once it's done?
Correct.
Okay. And my last question is, there was an item up there on the schedule of soft costs.
Yes.
Can you explain the $6 million soft cost figure?
So soft costs include the architectural and engineering fees, the owner's project manager fees, which are state mandate to have a separate owner's project manager. That includes the testing inspection during construction, furnishings, technology, the card access system to the building. It also includes some contingencies, construction contingency, we talked about that earlier,
Okay.
somewhere in the range of $1.6 million in construction contingencies. There's some other smaller components, moving costs. Essentially what we want to make sure is that everything that is needed to turn the keys over and have that building operate is included in that so that there's no surprises later.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, thank you, Anne Marie Stronach, Pillsbury Ave. I just have a quick question. You have 2 areas that you're looking at potential bid alternates, and you're saying that if the bids come in favorable, you will do those as part of the Building 1 project right away. If those bid alternates come in favorable and you're able to achieve those 2 additional areas on Building 1, how will that impact Building 2? Will that mean that you will only be leaving the wash bay and not putting the existing offices, and then the roof and all that will come off? And will you be doing a cost estimate when the bid alternates come in to determine if that's a viable option for Building 2?
Yes, if the offices bid alternates, if the bid alternates are accepted, we will take the offices, engineering and administration, move them to Building 1. That'll vacate that wing-shaped building, the existing building, entirely from any occupied spaces. And we'll have a wash bay, which is not an occupied space, but we'll still keep the wash bay on the end. And then that space will be essentially used for storage, light storage.
Okay, and what is proposed for the second bid alternate that's not by the food pantry? What are you thinking about in that area?
So that's primarily vehicle and equipment storage. So that would provide more of the first responder critical vehicles within the operations building. So it's a more efficient storage of the vehicles closer to where the main operations are, where the main employees are. So that's bid alternate 2 because it's less critical. It would be a nice to have in this situation and provide the town with significant growth opportunities in the future. But because it's not needed for right now, that's why it's a bid alternate.
So basically, you're going to prioritize the two bid alternates separately, and when they go out, they're going to be two separate alternates?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you so much, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Mark Ratman, 101 Merrimack Meadows Lane. I just got a couple of questions. I was looking at your presentation, and you were talking about an independent cost estimate that changed from the 27 to 32 that was done by, so who did the independent study to come up with these numbers?
We used a firm by the name of TCI,
Okay.
Tutora Consulting Incorporated. And so what we did was essentially met with this independent, his firm does estimates every week essentially for the market, and has a real good pulse on the market. And then we went through and gave him details on what we anticipated this program would consist of. And he put together a much more comprehensive estimate versus just using a cost per square foot estimate that's initially used in the conceptual level. So normally we would be doing that further down the road, but understanding that the market conditions are what they are, which is a bit unpredictable, we wanted to get the opinion from a professional estimator on where we think the market is today and where it will be when we bid. And some of the reasons for that increase really came down to his markups on escalation. Normally we carry 5% escalation for a year-over-year increase, and he carried just for first quarter escalation 5%. Because of the unpredictability of the market. And then also he had in what's referred to as estimating contingencies, and this is primarily because the plans aren't fully developed for their industry and the estimating industry. They carry a higher contingency, which may or may not be needed, but we want to make sure that if something was missed, that it doesn't cause the overall project to increase. It'll essentially offset in the estimate, but that was a primary reason for some of those increases.
So once you did the new design of leaving the food pantry the way it is, and you made the alterations to this new plan, did it go back to them to take a look at it? And they're the ones who agreed with the 28 million, 28.5?
Yes, we essentially took that estimate and extracted the things that we said we would extract through that process from his estimate. And then he's updating a final version for us, but ultimately this is the removal of his components from that estimate.
Next thing I got is the wash bay. The wash bay that's being put on the existing building, is that an addition to the building? Or are they using the existing building and renovating it? Or is it an addition that's being added onto the building?
We're using the existing building and renovating the end bay.
Okay, and what is that used for now? What is it used for now? Is it for vehicle
Just
storage?
vehicle storage, yes.
Okay, and so the proposed wash bay, will this be able to handle every vehicle in town, including fire trucks and everything else that goes in this community?
Yes, it's essentially designed it's a manual wash system. It's not an automatic drive-through system, but it'll have doors on each side so that any vehicle can pull in, shut the doors. Then it has a pressure wash system inside that allows it.
So pretty much all it is just you break out a hot seat and spray down the vehicles.
A little more sophisticated than that, but it does have a undercarriage wash system so that you can hit the undercarriage of the vehicles as they drive in, which is very critical because that's one area that gets missed quite a bit, and you find that you have a lot of deterioration. So as you drive in, you have the ability to undercarriage wash, and as you move through, you'll have wands on either side with a pressure wash system, detergent system, recycling system to try to minimize water usage.
And so that whole renovation is going to cost $800,000 to do just the wash bay?
That's correct. New construction would be somewhere in the range of 1.1 million.
Yeah, okay. No, that's good news to me. I've talked to our DPW, I talked to our town manager for many years. One of the things that we haven't been using enough is using calcium chloride when we're doing plowing. It saves cost in salt by using that, by spreading that. And one of the reasons they haven't been doing it is because the vehicles aren't getting cleaned on a regular basis, that they can't do it. And when you use calcium out there, when you use salt, it sticks to the vehicle, and if you don't wash it after every storm, it's corroding the vehicles.
Right.
So we need a wash bay thing. So I'm in favor of renovations and building, and I believe we need, definite improvements to the DPW. My concern is with the cost, and I really, I'm still nervous with what we're talking about. If we hadn't done any major renovations to the town, if we hadn't built an elementary school for $100 million, or a new fire station for $60 million, I don't think this would be a conversation. I think everybody knows that we need things done down there. But with the way the market is and where the concerns are, and I'm hearing interest rates going up again, and so if the interest rates go up again, it's going to add additional cost to this. I know the town manager has said we will not build it if it happens, but I feel like it is going to happen. I think that this cost is going to keep increasing. The market's going up. The market's going down. Feds are raising rates. I think this cost is just going to keep growing and growing. And I can see it going up another $8 million if the Feds raise the rates. And that's a concern. So what I want to do is kind of look at this and see what we can do. So how many employees do we have for the whole DPW and our staff down there?
Down at the DPW,
Yeah.
at this facility, 37, I believe, and then you have the
10.
and then you'd have the school.
Yeah, so how many do we have for the school facilities? 10. So we're talking 50 people.
Yeah.
Around 50 people. Okay. So, so the renovations to the old building, how much would you say that's coming out to? Would you just guesstimate or whatever it was?
I'm going to just say roughly, we don't have all the details in front of me, maybe the $1.5 million range.
So 1.5 just to do renovations to be able to put vehicles and whatever.
Well, that's primarily
Yeah.
7 to 800s for the wash bay, and the remainders just to do some minor upgrades like the roof, new flooring, things like that.
Yeah.
So very minimal.
Oh, and I'm looking at, so I understand we're talking about a second building, but, if this happens, I just hope that we continue to work. If the costs keep going up and we're unable to fund this, and I have major concerns that we'll be able to fund this, that we do something to take care of the 50 employees that will be able to build something down there. If we're able to renovate a section of this for $800,000 and create something, I would think that we could take another, it's a cinder block building. I mean, and that's pretty much where most places are that store vehicles. So I think would be ways to renovate the whole thing, to add additional storage, to put additional vehicles in there, and then build something off to the side that would take care of the employees, give them adequate facilities. I don't agree with keeping the people in the old building. I understand it's there, but you know what? Tear it down, that section, and add additional storage. It's a cinder block building. Knock it down, add more storage for the vehicles, keep all the vehicles inside, make a wash bay there, and then spend some money on the side and build something that's suitable for the employees. I thank all the hard work. I really appreciate everybody's work on this. Like I said, I'm not against building something for the employees and doing something for the town. My fear is just the cost of everything that's going up in this community and how much the taxpayers can take. And, it's like I said, I'm in favor of building something for everybody, but my concern is the taxpayers in this town and, what the rates are. I know we're going to do it under the existing budget, but we have a lot of other things that we need to do in this town, including replacing water lines and everything else that we're doing. So thank you for your work. I appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else? And I just want to reinforce one other thing. The schools, their storage and their offices are all going in the new building.
Correct, right. We have space for workshop, offices, as well as vehicle and equipment storage for the school maintenance department.
Good. Okay, I think we've covered everything unless someone wants us to go over anything else. Town meeting's on October 3rd. This is a big part of that night. Finance Committee public hearing is on Monday evening, September 26th. We are presenting this plan to the school committee to update them on the final concept on Wednesday evening at 7. Obviously, this is being televised, and we'll replay it between now and town meeting. So if anyone has any other questions, they can reach out to me. But I appreciate everyone attending tonight, and nice job on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.